I want to bring in NBC White House correspondent Mike Memoli, NBC News chief international correspondent Keir Simmons. Also with us, Washington Post foreign affairs columnist and MSNBC contributor David Ignatius. Mike, this is a shift in policy from the president. So why this? Why now?
So this is a shift. President Biden has been
years.
Sorry, go ahead, Mike. We'll go to you next.
What we've seen now in the just shy of 3 years since Russia invaded Ukraine is that the Ukrainian government has been consistently asking for more resources, more firepower, more capabilities to take on Russia, to defend their territorial sovereignty. And the reaction on the part of the Biden administration has often been to slowly but eventually provide that resource. And so this is the latest example of that, really a line that the administration had been very wary of stepping over because of this fear of escalation. They were fearing of giving Ukraine the ability to strike within Russian territory. So what has changed? Even as White House officials are not explicitly confirming this decision has been made, they are speaking more broadly about what they see as an even bigger escalation on the Russian side, the deployment of thousands of North Korean troops into Western Russia, into the Kursk region, that potentially could be used to take on Ukraine and reverse some of the gains we've seen the Ukrainians make. Now, President Biden, this decision coming as he's making his last foreign visit here to Brazil, participating in his last summit, the G20 summit, and he addressed the goals of continuing to support Ukraine here toward the end of his administration. Take a listen to what the president said this morning.
Finally, we all have to work to end the conflicts and crises that are eroding progress and food security around the world. Ukraine. The United States strongly supports Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Everyone around this table, in my view, should as well.
Now, the reaction across the board has been so interesting to this, Chris. You mentioned what the Deputy National Security Advisor, John Feiner, said this morning, responding to the Kremlin's steep concern about this. But what we are seeing domestically back at home, senior Republican lawmakers calling this decision by the Biden administration overdue, welcoming it, saying they want to study further what could be done. But then at the same time, some allies of the president-elect, of Donald Trump, being frustrated that this may be an escalation that he will then have to inherit, as Donald Trump Jr. putting it, potentially the start of World War III. And so all this, of course, comes on the backdrop of this change of administration. The Biden administration wanting to do everything they can here at the 11th hour, though, to put Ukraine on the strongest possible position for potential negotiations that could happen after a change in administration in Washington.
Yeah, David, there's a pretty broad spectrum of what this might mean, whether it's provocative to the point of World War III or it puts Ukraine in a position of more strength ahead of what they hope would potentially be peace talks when President Trump takes over. How do you see this?
So the first thing to say is that President Biden really hoped to avoid this move. He's resisted it for months. The reason is that U.S. intelligence analysts have told Biden, the White House, that they think it's likely that Russia will react by escalating, although they say the escalation is likely to be, in their words, horizontal, meaning across other fronts, not up toward use of nuclear weapons. So there's a risk of greater Russian covert action against NATO and NATO countries, risk of Russia arming North Korea in significant new ways that would threaten Japan and South Korea. So there's been reluctance. Why did Biden decide to do it now? I think there are two basic reasons. It's clear that President-elect Donald Trump intends to go into negotiations when he's inaugurated. In a sense, he's already begun those, as he said he would, by talking with the principals. And the Biden administration, quite sensibly, wants to give Ukraine every advantage, every bit of leverage in the negotiations that are coming so that it can get a just settlement with Russia from a greater position of strength. I think the second important reason is that the U.S. sees North Korea's involvement in this Kursk region, trying to push back the Ukrainian troops, as an important Russian escalation in itself. And this is, I think, meant as a warning both to Russia and North Korea that bringing in another country into this war is unacceptable and is going to be met with a strong U.S. response.
Here we just saw, and Mike referred to this, one of the largest attacks carried out by Russia since the start of this brutal war, bombarding Ukraine's power grid.
Yeah.
What message should we take away from that about where things stand right now?
Yeah, it was a brutal attack, as you say, the worst that we've seen from Russia for 3 months. But it's everything, really. As David was suggesting, really everything now is about what happens when President-elect Trump arrives and what he has signaled that he wants deals to be done. So there have been talks between the Ukrainians and the Russians over some kind of a deal that would mean that you didn't attack energy infrastructure. What you saw over the weekend was the Russians attacking energy infrastructure because, well, after those talks haven't worked. And so what the Russians are doing is sending a brutal message that they hope will be heard and will push the Ukrainians towards being more prepared to negotiate. Of course, whether that's the case or not is an entirely different question. And I think one of the big issues here is that I've spoken to multiple European diplomats and officials through the weekend. They are not united. You can see it publicly with the German Chancellor making a phone call to President Putin and then being criticized by President Zelensky. Behind the scenes, one official described European officials as in panic about what's coming with President-elect Trump. So I think the issue really here is that we don't actually know how these talks are going to go, how it's going to play out. I do think that it will be tough and it will be fraught and it will be bitter, and we simply can't say which side is going to win out. So again, historically, fighting gets worse as a potential ceasefire comes along the horizon. I think that's what you're seeing now, as David says, as the two sides and all sides have tried to position themselves.
So, David, what should we watch for? What are you watching for from Russia going forward here?
So I'm watching for how they will respond. That they've been quite specific in saying that they would respond. I don't think it will be a tactical nuclear response. Chinese strongly oppose that. I think with President-elect Trump on the way, there's another reason for Russia not to move so radically. But I think they will take steps. In a sense, this whole issue surrounds the presence of Ukrainian troops inside Russian territory in Kursk. There have been reports today that the Biden administration has placed limits on Ukraine's use of these ATACMS in the kind of Kursk regional theater to go after the North Koreans who are fighting there, to protect Ukraine's foothold as a bargaining chip. So if that's the limit of how they're used, that may constrain how Russia responds. But there's going to be something, and it's not surprising that the Trump camp is worried because they're going to have to inherit it.
David Ignatius, Mike Memoli, Keir Simmons, thank you all.